It was a big church wedding. All eyes were on the radiant bride as her father escorted her down the aisle. They reached the altar. The groom was beaming. The bride kissed her father and placed something in his hand. The guests in the front pews responded with ripples of laughter. Even the pastor chuckled. As her father gave her away in marriage, the bride gave back to him his credit card. Using a credit card is making a promise to pay. Making promises is one way people used God's name in the ancient world. Before we think more about how we use or misuse the name of God, exactly what is the name of the Hebrew God, the God of Israel? God told Moses to go to Egypt to announce that God was going to set the people free. Moses said he could not go tell the Israelites that God had sent him when he didn't even know God's name. In a polite way, Moses was asking, "What is your name, God?" God was a little elusive at first and said, "I am who I am. Tell them I am sent you." I'm sure Moses stood there scratching his head thinking, "I am sent me?" Then God revealed the divine name to Moses. What is it? Scholars think it was pronounced Yahweh. We're not sure. Why? Jews developed a practice of not saying the name Yahweh, and it's because of this third commandment. The Israelites are told not to misuse the name of God. The Jews sought to obey this command. If you never say the name, you can't be guilty of misusing it, right? However, during Bible times, it was common to say the name Yahweh. In fact, this name is found more than 6,500 times in the Hebrew Bible. Yahweh means to cause to be. He will cause to be. If we think of it as a noun, we'd say, he who causes to be, or the one who is responsible for everything that is. Yahweh is a very powerful name of an all-powerful God. As I mentioned earlier, uttering God's name was something that was regularly done when someone took a vow or made an oath. For example, David and Jonathan made a pact to always respect and care for each other. We read in 1 Samuel, then Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, since both of us have sworn in the name of Yahweh, saying, Yahweh shall be between me and you and between my descendants and your descendants forever." In other words, if someone was involved in an important matter, he or she would promise that they would fulfill their obligation by using the name Yahweh. That would let the Lord and the other party know that they were serious about their promise. So part of what this commandment is aimed at is having us do what we promise to do. Jesus told his disciples that they should not swear or make promises at all, only that they should say yes or no. We're familiar with oaths used in law courts. I heard about a defendant who took the witness stand. The judge asked him to raise his right hand and answer the following question: "Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?" The defendant responded, "Okay, I'll try anything once." Another witness was on the stand. The lawyer sneered at him and said, "You seem to have more than the average share of intelligence for a man of your background." The witness responded, "If I weren't under oath, I'd return the compliment." Some Quakers will not swear even in court because they believe the Lord has forbidden it. But the real point of Christ's teaching of this command is that we certainly should keep our promises, keep them or don't make them. So how do we honor God's name? By keeping our promises. In the name of God, husbands and wives promise to love and to cherish each other in sickness and in health. Arthur Sweltz, in his book, Life at Close Quarters, has described the stages of marriage by what happens in each of the first 7 years of marriage when the wife gets a bad cold. First year: "Sugar, I'm worried about my baby girl. You've got a bad sniffle. I want to put you in the hospital for a complete checkup. I know the food is lousy, but I've arranged for your meals to be sent up from your favorite 5-star restaurant. 4 years later, when she gets a bag cold, the husband says, "Look, dear, be sensible. After you've fed the kids and washed the dishes, you better hit the sack." By the 7th year, the husband is saying, "For heaven's sake, stop sneezing. What are you trying to do, give me pneumonia?" For Christians, this command relates to the vows we take when we get married. We promise to be faithful. I know that sometimes it is impossible to keep one's promises. I was a young pastor in my mid-20s. I received a call from a lay pastor who had heard me preach for a few months. He asked me to come talk to his adult daughter at his house. She came out of the back bedroom of her parents' home with 2 black eyes. It was obvious that she had been severely beaten by her husband. She defended him, telling me that he only beat her when he got drunk and he only drank on the weekends. Even though I believed very strongly that we should keep our marriage vows, I told her for her own sake she needed to hire an attorney and get a divorce. She should not go back to him. We can't always keep our promises, but we honor God's name when we can and do. This command also teaches us to repay our debts as we promised. The Sunday school superintendent at a church I served with was a man I deeply respected. He had purchased a lumber company in southern Indiana right before a downturn in the construction business. He worked hard but could not make a go of it. After a few years, he had lost so much money that he decided to sell the business. He paid his employees, sold off all the lumber, every piece of equipment, sold the land and the buildings to pay back his creditors, but he owed them more. Then he sold his house, his furniture, and his car so that he could pay off his debts. He told me that was the only Christian thing to do. Filing bankruptcy was not an option for him because he felt he had made a promise to those lenders before God, and he wanted to honor that promise. I know that sometimes it's impossible to pay back what we owe, and that Christians must sometimes declare bankruptcy. I think that is especially the case now during this pandemic when so many people have lost their jobs. By keeping our word, by honoring God when we can, we do honor God's name. A second meaning of this commandment has to do with prayer. One way we can show disrespect to God is by how we pray. Using God's name trivially or in a meaningless way could be a self-interested prayer. Did you pray for the Bucks to win the Super Bowl? Praying for Kansas City to lose? Do you pray to win the lottery that other people won't? Have you ever prayed for a hurricane to miss us, meaning that it would hit someone else? According to Jewish tradition, if someone is approaching a home and sees a fire in the distance, he or she may not say, "God, please let this not be my house." Such a prayer could be misinterpreted as a plea that it be someone else's house on fire. Some prayers obviously take God's name in vain. You hear these prayers all the time. Damn you, go to hell. Well, I hope you don't hear them all the time. A curse is technically a prayer. May God damn you for all eternity. May God send you to hell. We have an interesting curse in the Bible. Some boys were making fun of the prophet Elisha on his way to Bethel. Elisha was follically challenged. The text says, while he was going up on the way, some small boys came out of the city and jeered at him, saying, "Go away, Baldy, go away, Baldy." When he turned around and saw them, he cursed them in the name of Yahweh. Then 2 she-bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of the boys. Dr. Dave Wilson told about a post-operative patient returning to his orthopedics office. She came to have stitches removed from her hand. She was seated on the exam table while Dave sat on the stool in front of her. As he leaned forward and started to remove the first suture, he heard her gasp. "If it pinches," he said, "feel free to say some bad words." Without hesitation, she looked down at Dave and said, "You're going bald." I don't know if she met a bear in the parking lot or not. The third meaning of the commandment relates to our role as representatives of God. In the past, some of you have received emails from me asking for financial assistance of some kind. Of course, those emails were not from me. At least twice my email account has been hacked. It's a scam that targets pastors. By taking on a pastor's identity, the scammers are sometimes able to steal money from people because they want to help their pastor. The Hebrew of this third command says literally, "You will not lift up or carry the name Yahweh in a trivial way." You're not to deceive others by pretending to be good representatives of the Lord. You don't wear God's name tag as the people of God, then do others harm. Calling ourselves Christians means we take up Christ's identity. We are representatives of the Lord. It's not something that we should take lightly. Calling oneself a Christian and not living as Jesus has taught us breaks this commandment. In the Lord's Prayer, we pray for God's name to be hallowed, to be made holy. How do we do that? How do we hallow God's name? Adam Hamilton tells a story from one of his congregants named Brian. It's an example of hallowing God's name with one's actions. It was the peak of the coronavirus outbreak in Kansas City. Brian went to pick up a pizza at a local restaurant. His office is located near one of the most impoverished neighborhoods in the city. He heard of a pizza place there and wanted to support its business, so he called in a carry-out order. When he arrived, he saw there a lot of children and youth waiting to get pizza. There were no parents to be seen. Puzzled, he asked the owner, a man named Gary, what was up. He learned that for decades, word on the street had been that if a child's parents didn't feed them at night, Gary would provide them a slice of pizza so they wouldn't go to bed hungry. Brian was in awe. He paid for his pizza. As he got ready to leave, Gary looked around at all these kids waiting for their free pizza, and he said with a big smile, "Isn't God great?" Brian said, "Here's a guy running a pizza place in one of the most underprivileged streets in the city during a global pandemic, and the only thing I could see on his face was pure joy. It was just awesome to see." No one expects a restaurant owner to give away food for free, but in doing so, this man became the vehicle by which God gave kids their daily bread. This is what it looks like to hallow God's name. When we honor God's name in this way, we provide life to others and we find life and joy in the process. We hallow God's name when we act like Jesus Christ, loving one another, forgiving one another, giving to the poor, standing up for justice, being kind even to those who mistreat us, giving ourselves for others as Christ gave himself for us. May all of us bring honor to the name of God.